I recently wrapped up a playthrough of Mass Effect 1 Legendary Edition. Mass Effect was a formative trilogy of RPGs for me in high school, so I wanted to revisit a perceived classic to reevaluate how I felt about it. Most of it held up, except all the extremely important parts. Mass Effect in general is a bit confused, trying to posture as one thing and still reinforcing the opposite in the spirit of pulling in as many different players as it can. But in spite of its confusion, Mass Effect holds within a plethora of deeply moving and complex characters who explore social issues of its time to varying success, as well as present us with challenging relationships and conversations we may not ever have in real life given our beliefs or ideologies. The companions and squadmates we meet along the way to saving the galaxy are a collection of misfits and ne'er-do-wells, soldiers and mercenaries, perfectionists, paragons, realists, and renegades. Our subject today is one such companion and unlikely friend, a survivor of Mass Effect's confused theming, a victim of its ignorance. What makes him a fan favorite, what stands him out among the rest despite only being a squadmate in one Mass Effect and potentially never surviving past it, is the state of his very existence. Caught in the middle of breaking down in-game stereotypes while having those same stereotypes pushed upon him by game elements both diegetic and otherwise. He represents the awkward balance between Mass Effect's messaging and its mistakes. He's everything good, everything bad, and everything odd about the series, and he's my favorite character from the original Mass Effect. I'm GC, and this is the Ballad of Urdnot Wrex. Urdnot Wrex is blunt, rude, and accepting job offers in Citadel space for the right price. Work typically involving installing a hole inside someone else's brain. Wrex is a force to be reckoned with and a powerful ally. He's one of the last of his species who can use psychic biotic abilities. He's a full-fledged tank you can pretty much let loose on your enemies. His intimidating nature adds a lot of moxie to a squad largely filled with mindful and polite bootlickers. And he's not what you'd expect based on this first impression. Or I should say, based on this first impression Mass Effect wants us to have. Wrex is a Krogan, a species from the Milky Way and one of many who belong to a collective of civilizations across the galaxy, all congregating on the Citadel, a sort of congressional area for the races of Mass Effect to engage in diplomatic affairs. This political tug-of-war breeds a sense of loyalty to each individual's respective species, and as a result, Citadel-governed space is full of racial tension, which means racial discrimination and social injustice. You see, Mass Effect is one big allegory about race and racism. At least, it holds up pretty well as one, under this specific paradigm we can view it with. And before you ever meet Wrex, you learn enough about the Krogan people to misunderstand the kind of person he is. Casual mentions of the Krogans include, but are not limited to, their violent natures, their lack of intelligence, their ominous presence. Mass Effect's in-game codex leads you to believe these aspects of Krogan society as truths. The codex narrator has this stentorian voice. It makes it sound so official, so authentic.
The Krogan evolved in a hostile and vicious environment. Until the invention of gunpowder weapons, eaten by predators was still the #1 cause of Krogan fatalities. Afterwards, it was death by gunshot.
Both in and out of character, the prejudices the Mass Effect universe has towards the Krogan species are imprinted on us very early. These are reinforced almost immediately when we find the Krogan in question either threatening the bouncer to a club or being questioned by Citadel security for said threats. Before he ever meets them on the Citadel, Urdnot Wrex is already at a disadvantage with most players. It's one thing for characters in a setting to give you their opinion about certain groups of people. You can easily fall into believing them, and you're also just as likely to raise a suspicious eyebrow at said character. But when the built-in encyclopedia starts echoing the same ideas, well, you start thinking there might be some truth to what you're being told. Then Wrex joins your squad, and Wrex is completely unlike anything the Codex makes him out to be. This tough-as-nails Krogan mercenary with a scar riding down the side of his face is one of the smartest mates on your crew. By chatting with Wrex in between missions, you learn a lot about his life and about Krogan history, specifically Krogan genocide. The entire Krogan race are victims of chemical warfare, a genophage which left the species' reproductive abilities severely hamstrung. This was done in response to the Krogan rising in power after saving the galaxy from being overrun by an invasive species known as the Rachni. Wrex is committed to finding a cure for his people, and much of his time off the clock is devoted to following leads about it. He's also well versed in Krogan traditions and laments how many Krogan aren't more in tune with them due to their displacement across the galaxy after the effects of the genophage. He's dismayed at how many Krogan don't really care about saving their species and are happy earning credits doing mercenary work until it kills them. He talks about how their home planet is inhospitable and how many Krogan fall into mercenary work because it's the only kind of work given to them with a way to escape the environment they grew up in. Wrex is oriented towards the long term. Wrex believes the Krogan people need to come together and save their race. Wrex is deeply committed to those who help him get closer to his goal. The more you learn about Urdnot Wrex, the more you realize he's not like other Krogan. And when you really think about it, the statement in and of itself is pretty racist. One of the reasons I like Wrex so much is how effectively he reveals your own internalized prejudices to you. The conversations between him and the player might feel tense for some and refreshing for others. He spends the entirety of Mass Effect 1 undoing the propaganda you fell for in its first couple of hours. For some players, he'll never completely change their minds, but for most, he can at least inspire some doubt about their understanding of the fictional world they're playing in, which then, hopefully, makes those real-world connections start to click. Wrex's personal assignment for the player in Mass Effect 1 is therefore a good litmus test of how the player feels about their new companion and whether or not they're sympathetic to his cause. Wrex will tell you about his family's ceremonial armor, an important piece of his personal history and a symbol to Krogan culture itself. Recovering the armor gains the player a great amount of favor with Wrex, and with it back in his possession, he will genuinely begin to trust the player more. You can also trip, fall, and stumble your way into the side mission by exploring every solar system node on your map, but it's not the way most players will encounter it. I hope. Getting Wrex his family's armor back is pivotal to a key moment in his story. It's not just another check on a list of missions to do before hitting Mass Effect's point of no return. It's a blessing in a life or death situation with rippling consequences in the series. Before we can get to that, though, there's a galaxy-sized elephant in this room we need to talk about. Have you noticed the differences in the way I talk about Urdnot Wrex compared to the other characters I've done ballads for? The perspective from which I'm writing. Despite his popularity, Wrex is still largely a background character in the Mass Effect series. Saz Katzroy has his entire life laid out in front of us. Luigi grows into an archetype of his own and has a good amount of time devoted to his evolution as a character. Wrex, like the other Mass Effect 1 squadmates, is a token of a race of people who don't actually exist, but a token nonetheless. A spokesperson reading off information about his people whose existence is built around their needing to be a Krogan squadmate to round out the roster. In other words, almost all of who Wrex is, all he can be outside of an information repository, is a reaction to player dialogue choices. So you don't really get a feel for his way of thinking. You don't get to know Wrex on the intimate level you would a different kind of character. And this means we can't talk about Wrex by picking his mind and inferring the way he might be feeling moment to moment. We have to talk about him in respect to the functional purpose he serves. The scenes of Mass Effect don't focus on anyone else but the player character, and supporting characters are flavor text. At the same time Mass Effect is trying to warn you of the dangers of propaganda, it's written by people who have fallen for propaganda and don't seem to know it. This is the issue with how Mass Effect presents its world and its many civilizations, but by far the character who suffers the worst of it is Wrex. Every Krogan stereotype he debunks, the writers reinforce through world building. The Diegetic Codex being an unreliable narrator is a great touch, but there aren't many other Krogan besides Wrex who exemplify his behavior. Even though he's adamant about the Krogan deserving better, Wrex still throws most of his people under the bus. The races of Mass Effect are largely one-dimensional and are sci-fi equivalents to traditional fantasy races. The Salarians are elves, the Volus are dwarves, the Asari are drow, and so on. But at the same time, they're being used for a very complicated discussion about race. And when you have one-dimensional characters being used for nuance in ways which would require much more rounding of these factions than a video game development cycle would allow, you run into problems. So here you have the Krogan, the Mass Effect equivalent to orcs, who have a very troubled history of being characterized in certain ways by fantasy authors, being used as an allegory for social injustice and genocide, but at the same time, still being a race predominantly identified by the same racial stereotype allegories they're supposedly challenging. He might be teaching players a lesson about prejudice, but to the writers of Mass Effect, Wrex is merely an exception to the Krogan rule. He doesn't represent the Krogans, he's the black sheep of the group. He's essentially written as one of the good ones. I don't think there's another instance of a character in video games who rides this awkward line. In a meta sense, Urdnot Wrex is fighting against his own existence. Even with everything he believes in, here he is, a Krogan mercenary jumping from one job to the next, far from home and farther from where he wants to be. He's got no control over the situation, to be fair. It's the writing team who decided he'd be a Krogan mercenary. The same writing team who wrote the Krogan to be battle-hardened adrenaline junkies who thrive in violence and decided to write the destruction of their planet as the result of a self-inflicted nuclear winter. The more meta you get with it, the more it works its way back around to being something with a lot more depth to it. Wrex isn't just a victim of the Milky Way's views on the Krogan. He's a victim of the way Mass Effect's writing views who or what he represents. In the same way oppressed groups are systemically forced into specific careers or choices, the characters representing them are often pushed into the same roles within fiction. This Ouroboros fuels the misbegotten perception of those groups and is used to further justify or rationalize their oppression as a consequence of their individual choices. And Wrex is trying to escape it. He's more interested in his people's culture and history than anything else. He's focused on elevating them above the war-torn badlands of their planet. But he has everything and everyone, including the unseen gods of the universe he lives in, against him. Wrex is almost self-aware. Like at any minute, he's going to look directly into the camera and tell you what to do. He essentially becomes a character who wants to rewrite part of the world's lore. This is what makes the mission on Virmire in Mass Effect 1 such a crucial moment for most playthroughs. On your mission to save the galaxy, you and your squad learn about the villain's secret facility, where he's reportedly studying a cure for the Krogan genophage in order to create a self-made Krogan army. This obviously piques Wrex's interest, so when the Salarian commando team announces their plan to destroy the base and the genophage cure with it, tensions begin to run high. Wrex is ready to do whatever it takes to find the cure for his people, and this facility could have the answers he's looking for. He gets proceedingly angry as the rest of the group, both the Solarians and your own squadmates, start to warn him about his temper and make dismissive statements about the importance of curing the genophage. The only thing standing between Wrex, the cure, and his demise is you. This final confrontation with him isn't about having a high enough charm or intimidate skill to convince him to stand down. It's definitely mechanically the case, but besides the point. Most players won't have their persuasion stats at the level they need to be in order to talk Wrex down. Everything about this scene depends on whether or not Wrex has sufficiently changed your mind about his people leading up to this moment. And if your charm or intimidation skill isn't high enough, whether you went out of your way to help Wrex with recovering his armor. With the fate of the Krogan people potentially on the line, he needs to know you're on his side. Without having made the effort to build your relationship with him, and without being persuasive enough, Wrex will get shot down by everyone around him. One more violent Krogan taken down. Nothing new. If you've spoken to him across your adventure and got his armor back, Wrex will listen to what you have to say and begrudgingly agree with needing the facility destroyed. In doing so, he completely turns Mass Effect's canonization of the Krogan people on its head. By being the cooler head in this situation, Wrex undermines the in-game codex, the stereotypes placed upon him by other characters and the writers, and represents the player's own change in perspective towards the Krogan. He realizes the facility would just be used to enslave the Krogan and lives on to continue his work. Whether or not Urdnot Wrex survives the confrontation at Virmire holds long-lasting implications for the Krogan race as a whole. It can either perpetuate the injustices committed onto the Krogan, or set in motion a chain of events where, as Commander Shepard, players work together with Wrex in future Mass Effect games to actualize his dream of saving his people from extinction. Wrex is seen as a guide to his people. His heroic deeds for the sake of the Krogan inspires the clans to unite under a single banner, this time with the goal of rebuilding, healing, and repopulating their planets. With the passing of time and sequels, Wrex reveals himself to be a wise and benevolent leader, one who views the old ways as a means for survival and understands new traditions need to be created in order for the Krogan to move into a better future. Alternatively, players less favorable to the Krogan will slowly whittle away at their prospects via dismissal of their plight or aiding their more destructive leaders in obtaining control of the Krogan clans. If Wrex is alive to witness this scenario, he isn't presented as a respectful, honorable leader. Instead, Mass Effect portrays him as a rage-filled warrior, ambushing the player at a space station to exact revenge on them for dooming the Krogans to their genocide. The scary thing about this is how unsurprising either possible outcome is in context of your playthrough. Wrex's existence in the Mass Effect universe will ultimately validate whatever you believe about him and his people. Whatever you think the Krogan are, that's what they are. Urdnot Wrex is a single voice of dissent in an ocean of disinformation begging you to listen to it. A primary source asking you to understand, to listen, to back him up when he needs you to, and he's exceedingly competent. If he asks for help, it's because the odds are completely stacked against him, out of his control and unfairly. And as the player, you have the choice to believe him or condemn him. You have the power to change the galaxy's mind about the Krogan or push them further into a corner, where the only option they'll have is to confirm its backwards perspective. You can help Wrex and the Krogan dispel the propaganda, or slowly strip away their agency until they are nothing but the headlines written about them. Because Urdnot Wrex's story isn't about him or the Krogan. It's about how easily a person's identity can be taken from them, how difficult it is for them to reclaim it when facing systemic injustice. It's about the insurmountable odds of changing the world's perspective one mind at a time against a machine designed to prevent it. and it's about whether or not you're capable of noticing when you're caught up in it. If you're able to check yourself on beliefs or perspectives you were taught. If you can acknowledge the internalized prejudice you still have and break them down to grow as a person. The Ballad of Urdnot Wrex isn't about Urdnot Wrex. It's about you.